Yo, what's good, family? Welcome to the Deal Divers podcast, where we deep dive actual closed deals and uncover those gems, that knowledge, and those action items that you can take away and apply in your business and close that next deal. I am your host, if you don't already know, Ty Franklin, also known as Ty the Investor on Instagram. So if you're not already following me on Instagram, just go ahead and head over there and hit that follow button, all right? This episode, we will be talking about my first deal and how that deal gave me proof of concept that wholesale real estate is legit and is life-changing. So before we get into that, make sure you hit that like button, you comment below. I would love to hear your feedback, and you also subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date when more podcast episodes come out or just more videos in general, all right? So let's jump right into it. Let's not waste any time. So I started out working a 9 to 5. This is my quick story. Let's talk about it. This story is similar to probably the majority of anybody that gets into wholesale real estate, right? Started out working an 8 to 5 job, actually, and I wanted to learn how to get into real estate, right? But I didn't have the money, the amount of money that I thought was required to jump into the real estate space. I didn't have the knowledge at all. I didn't have any experience. I didn't have any licenses or whatever the case may be. And my credit score wasn't that great, right? So I just took some of those things and I put it in Google, right? And I started searching, how can I get in real estate or invest in real estate without having a high credit score, without having a lot of money, without having experience, without having the licenses? And to my surprise, which I didn't know at the time, wholesale real estate came up. So I started going on YouTube and I started deep diving this wholesale real estate industry, right? This wholesale real estate business. And I resonated with it because my current job at the time, I was actually playing the middleman. And that's essentially what wholesale and real estate is. You are middlemaning a transaction. You are finding a seller who wants to sell a property and getting that property under contract at a discounted price, at a lower price. And then you are marketing and finding you a buyer that wants to purchase that property at a higher price. And whatever that difference is, that's what you make as your profit, being the middleman, being the broker, right? So the concept of wholesale and real estate was so simple. And I started seeing a lot of people closing deals, making 10, 20, 30, $40,000 deals in 30 days, like they told us, right? But once I started getting into it, in actuality, it wasn't really 30 days, right? They didn't talk about that front end work that these people are putting in to get to that point. They're talking about 30 days from contract to close, not 30 days from when the lead comes in all the way to the close, right? And that's a whole different story. Back to my situation. So I was working this job, and obviously COVID came in. I was a 6-figure earner at this job. And once COVID came, my book of business started to decline. And as it started to decline, I started to look for other avenues. And that's what led me to searching about real estate, because obviously I wanted to get a real estate. I know real estate is one of the key pieces to creating wealth. So wholesale and real estate was my avenue that I took. It had the lowest barrier to entry, right? They didn't need all these requirements. I just needed to learn the game and learn how to play the game. So what I did was I started learning from YouTube, learning from these YouTube videos and learning the process, right? The process of, okay, the first question that I had was, where do I find sellers? So I look on YouTube and find these videos, or I listen to podcasts and see how the people that close deals find sellers, right? So where do I find sellers? Okay. What is the repair cost? How do I know what repairs are, right? Oh, how do I find a buyer, right? How much do I offer, right? How do I close these deals, right? So there's a lot of questions that I had that I was just, boggling my head with, and I listened to these YouTube videos to get the answers. But in actuality, the YouTube videos only give you but so much, right? So the best way for me to learn, and I believe for anybody to learn, is by taking action, right? And I'm always pro taking action, right? Because that's how you're going to learn. You don't learn how to ride a bike from watching somebody else ride a bike. You learn how to ride a bike from actually riding the bike. You can watch somebody ride a bike all day long, but as soon as you get on there, if you don't know how to ride it, you're going to fall off, right? So the same thing applies to anything you do, whether it's wholesaling, whether it's any space that's new to you. I always came and approached real estate or wholesale and real estate with that mindset. Okay, I learned something, I implement it. I learned something, I implement it. Because yeah, they say knowledge is power, but I don't believe that. I believe that applied knowledge is power. You can learn and know all things in the world, but if you don't apply that information to your benefit, then what is it, right? It's just sitting up there, right? So that's my mindset when it comes to this real estate industry and when it comes to wholesaling. And that was my mindset at that time. So from there, I'm learning, all these different things, how to find sellers, right? So how to find sellers, what was I doing at the time? I was driving for dollars. That's the first thing I ever learned about. Driving for dollars. Max Maxwell always preached driving for dollars, looking for distressed properties in the neighborhood. So I would go out in my neighborhood, in my area, or even other areas, and I would drive around and I would look at properties that had tarps on the roof, overgrown grass, busted windows, trash in the driveways, all types of things like that. Basically properties that looked like nobody lived in them or nobody took care of them. So I started jotting those addresses down, right? And I would drive for dollars for, 2-3 hours, and I might get 70 property addresses or something like that. So I was driving for dollars. Another way I was finding these sellers at the time was, Facebook groups, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Zillow for sale by owner. I would take those properties down, right? Write down those addresses, and I'm starting to create my list at this time. Now, this is me doing this without having any funds, right? Because obviously I didn't have, a lot of money to budget towards this. I'm just doing it as I go. So I'm building these lists as best way as I could, right? And also I did bandit signs, right? I learned, okay, well, if you put out a bandit sign and you put your phone number on it and say, we buy houses, phone number, we pay cash for houses, whatever, phone number, sellers will call you. So I did that for a couple weeks. I'll order 100 bandit signs on a Friday night at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. I would go out and I'll put these bandit signs out on the corners of, main roads and main streets and things like that, busy streets, and hope to get phone calls. Well, I learned quickly bandit signs didn't work, for me in that case, right? I would get calls from other wholesalers and things like that, just, wasting my time at the time. So I stopped doing bandit signs. I learned about, cold calling, right? So I would cold call these sellers, right? So I was going through the list of these homeowners, cold calling them. But let me back up real quick, getting their phone numbers. I didn't know how to get the phone numbers, and I found out about skip tracing, right? So skip tracing is the process of gathering a seller's contact information, their mobile phone, landline phone, things, email, stuff like that. So obviously I didn't have a lot of money to pay for skip tracing. So what I did was I did it the free way. I would go to truepeoplesearch.com, fastpeoplesearch.com. I would type in the seller's information, the property address, and then, I would look on the public records and see who the seller is, who owns it. And then I would go and see, what names pop up for that property address on True People Search or Fast People Search. And while doing that, there's contact numbers that show up as well. Now that took a lot of time. I did that for a list of 250, and that took me all of 2 days to do that, because I'll take every last number and I'll put it in that list, right? That was the most time-consuming thing. So when you don't have money, you have to have time. It's one or the other. So if you have money, you can pay for these different softwares or pay for people to do things for you to save time. That's why money is important, right? That's why having money is important, because money buys back your time. So I didn't have money at the time, so I had to use my time for the money that I didn't have, right? So I'm doing that for all these sellers that from these lists that I put together from driving for dollars and from online and all these different things. When it came to reaching out to the sellers, there was only a few options. I learned about direct mail. So I was like, okay, I'll do direct mail. I'll actually handwrite letters, put them in colorful envelopes, red, green, orange, pink, and I would send them to these houses, right? I'll get stamps and do the whole nine. But I realized that was not the best use of my time, because it took time to write out the letters, and then it took time to fold them up, put them in stamps, envelopes, and then take them to the post office, buy stamps, and send them out, right? So I did that. That didn't work. got rid of direct mail, stopped doing that immediately. Then I ran into cold calling, right? I figured out what cold calling was. So at the time, I would just use my phone and I would call one by one each homeowner that I had on the list. And I would do this after I get off work from my 8 to 5 job at the time. So I would only have maybe about 2 hours to do it because it started getting late. I get home at probably like 6:30, and then I stop calling at like 8, right? So I only have about an hour and a half or so to call. So I would call, but I started realizing while I was calling, one, I was using my personal number. So I stopped doing that, and I found out about Google Voice, where you can use a free number, right? It's a outside line, and you can use it as like a business line or whatever. It's not connected to your personal number, whatever the case may be, right? If people want to report you, whatever the case, or block you. So I used the Google Voice, and I was doing that. Then I realized it wasn't efficient. By doing that, I'm probably within an hour's time, I'm probably dialing maybe 20 phone numbers at a time. And the way that skip tracing works, it can be about 3 phone numbers per each contact, right? So if I'm dialing 3 phone numbers for each contact, I'm only dialing probably 20 numbers at a time. In actuality, I'm probably only dialing 6 sellers, 6 homeowners in an hour. And out of those 6, I may only talk to 1 or 2, because you may have some that don't answer, some that go to voicemail, wrong numbers, right? And the one that do answer probably is not interested. The other one that do answer is probably bullshitting you or not serious about selling or don't want to sell, or it may be somebody that does want to sell, right? But I realized it wasn't efficient for me. It wasn't efficient. So I started to invest in a dialer. I said, okay, how can I get better at this? A dialer. I came across people who were using these power dialers, right? So I started using Mojo Dialer. I used Phone Burner, IQ Dial, Batch Dialer, and then I came across Call Tools. So I use all of these different softwares before, right? I tried them all out and found out which one works best for me based off of cost, what the software can do, and Call Tools was the one that I liked the most. So I stuck with Call Tools because at this point I'm about 3 months in, right? So I have the mentality. I'm thinking, okay, people are closing deals in a month. Why am I not closing a deal? Why am I not closing a deal? So I'm worried about the time and not focus on the actual process. So I started shifting my mindset, like, okay, by doing what I was doing before, I needed to invest some money into this, right? So I had to invest in the dialer. Then I have to invest in PropStream. And PropStream is pretty much a software that allows me to pull lists, analyze properties, looking at comps, right? Find cash buyers as well. So I invested in that. It was $100 a month. So I said, no brainer. Call Tools, same thing, was like $100, $150 a month. So I had to invest in these softwares to be more efficient with my processes. And granted, it cost me an extra $250 a month, but there was some days where I had to actually DoorDash, right, to cover that expense for a PropStream and for Call Tools, right? So I had to hustle, right? I really wanted to do this because I saw people doing it and I had faith in myself that I can do it, and I had belief. Faith and belief is all I need to put me in the mindset that I can do something. After that, it's all about putting in that work, right? So once I got those softwares and those tools, I started speeding up the amount of people that I was talking to, right? I started talking to more people in a shorter period of time. I started actually getting leads and talking to people that want to sell their property, right? But at this point, I didn't know how to make offers. I didn't know how to run comps. I didn't know how to analyze a deal. I didn't know what repair cost was. I didn't know what cost what on repairs. I didn't know how to calculate repairs, right? I didn't know how to use the formula to make an offer, right, at the time. So I go back to the drawing board. I go back to YouTube. I try to figure this thing out, right? So I start making offers to people. They didn't know what I was doing. So I ended up getting 2 deals under contract. One of those deals was somebody scamming somebody on Craigslist saying that they were a homeowner and they weren't. So I figured that out. And then the second one, I got the property in the contract too high of a price because I gave the seller what the seller wanted, right? Versus making an offer. So I rolled the dice on it, gave the seller what she wanted, got it under contract, try to find a buyer, couldn't find one, so I had to terminate the deal. So I terminated 2 contracts before I actually got my first deal to close. So my third contract was the one that I actually closed. And how I found that seller was I pulled a list off of PropStream of vacant absentee owners. And what vacant absentee owners is a property that's vacant, and absentee just means that the homeowner doesn't primarily occupy that residence. It's absentee, so they don't live in that house, right? So this is a homeowner who had her primary residence that she lived in and another property that she had as a rental or whatever the case may be. So in this case, this property, this seller, I get this seller on the phone. I'm calling. I pull that list. I call it. And I get in contact with this lady, right? And she told me about this property. And this property was a vacant property that a friend of hers was living in, a family friend or relative was living in. And they were supposed to be fixing up the property for her. They stayed in it for about 2 years. And they end up trashing the place, right? And they end up moving out. And the property was sitting vacant for about 6 months or so. So she was tired of it. After that person destroyed the property, she said she's done with being a landlord. She didn't want to rent anymore. She just wanted to get rid of it, get the money, cash out, and just be done with it. I had that conversation with her. I asked her about the property, asked her about the condition, right? I asked her why she wanted to sell it. And these are all the different things, right? The motivation was she didn't want to be a landlord anymore because of what that person did, right? To the property, destroyed it. And she didn't want to put any more money into the property. And also she was getting older, right? So those are the reasons why she wanted to sell it. I asked her questions about the property, I asked her the condition. She told me it was just jacked up. Everything needed to be updated. I asked her how soon she was looking to sell the property. I just went through my script. I'm reading the script on my sheet of paper while I'm talking to her. I don't know. This is my first actual legit deal that I'm working on, right? That I believe that I can close. Well, the one that I terminated before because I locked it up too high, that was a legit one too. If I would have found a buyer, I would have closed that one. But that's another story. But this one was one I was really good about because of the area it was in. It was in a better area that people were invested in, right? And I knew that by looking at PropStream. I asked her how much she wanted. She said she wanted $35,000 for the property, right? So we get off the phone and I tell her if I can make that work, I'll give her a call back. So when I say that, I usually go look at comps, run comps, look at the numbers, try to see what I can offer and whatever. So I'm doing this. After I get off the line, using the max offer formula. I'm looking at, and it's not making sense, right? It's just not making sense to me. So I just go to PropStream and I'm looking at all the cash sales in the area. Based off of the cash sales in the area, if you go on PropStream, you can see cash buyers or cash transactions. They are highlighted in green. So once you start looking at the comps, they're highlighted in green. There's like a green notification that shows you like, okay, this was a cash sale. This was a cash sale. So I see a property down the street, literally about 5 properties down, that sold for $56,000 cash, right? And I'm thinking she wants $35,000 cash. 56, 35, that's like a $21,000 profit. In my head, I'm thinking, hell, it's worth a shot. So I said, okay, once I saw that, I said, let me go ahead and get her on the line. So I'm calling her up. And I think the ARV in this area, I forgot to mention, was probably around 120 or something like that. I'm not sure. Even at that time, I didn't know what legit ARV was or anything, right? So I'm just going off of what I saw on PropStream. I saw a cash transaction for $56,000. The seller wanted $35,000. I'm thinking in my head, that's a $21,000 profit. Let's make some money, right? Let's do it. My goal was to call that buyer that paid $56,000 for the house next door and get that buyer to buy this one. But it didn't go that way. It didn't go that way, not one bit. So this is November where I talked to her. I'm trying to get her back on the phone. She doesn't answer the phone. So I'm calling, I'm texting, I'm calling, I'm emailing, I'm texting, I'm calling, I'm emailing every single week, maybe once or twice a week, right? She doesn't answer. She doesn't get back on the phone until February, right? I'm calling every single week. I'm texting every single week until I get this lady back on the phone, and she doesn't answer the phone until February. By this time, she done forgot who I was, right? And luckily, she still wanted that same 35,000 that we discussed, right? So I had to remind her about the conversation we had and things like that. And she kind of recalled it a little bit. So at that moment, I told her, yes, we can make the 35,000 work. So from there, I sent over a contract. I got her under contract. She signed it. I used HelloSign. HelloSign is a software at the time. You can send, I think it's like 3, 4, or 5 free documents per month, right? So I didn't even have to pay for it. So I used HelloSign. She signed it. And at that point, I'm like, yeah, money in the bank. Let's get to it. Let's get to it, right? Wrong, right? So this property was 2 hours away from where I live. It's in a smaller town, a smaller market outside of Atlanta. I wasn't about to drive 2 hours to that property to take photos, to drive back and do what I had to do. So I started thinking, I said, let me get on Facebook. So I went on Facebook. I started joining these Facebook groups that are in that area, these buy, sell, trade groups, right? And I posted in there, I said, hey, if there's anybody willing to take photos of a property, I'll pay them $50. So I posted that in about 4 or 5 different Facebook groups like that in that area, and people started reaching out to me. And one of the people that reached out to me was a real estate agent in the area, which is good, right? And you'll see why in a second. So we connected. I told her to go out there, take pictures of this property. I told her I'm an investor. You know, I'm looking to sell this property here. I just need somebody to take photos for me of it. And she went out there. She took the photos. She took probably like 60 photos and like 10 videos of the property. I still have them to this day. And I paid her $50 Cash App. Now that's a gem. This is how people close deals without physically having to go down there. You have to get boots on the ground, right? You have to get people and hire people to do things for you if you don't want to or can't do it, right? So I had $50. I paid her. She did it. Saved me 4 or 5 hours worth of my time because I don't have to drive 2 hours there, 2 hours back, and maybe like 30 minutes taking photos, right? So paying for that really helped me out, save my time. So I get the photos back. I start marketing the property out. I market it on Facebook Marketplace. I put it out in Facebook groups. I put it on Craigslist. And probably about 3 weeks go by. The contract is expired in 4 weeks, in 30 days. So 3 weeks go by and I still don't have a buyer. I don't have anybody interested. So I started reaching out to real estate agents and seeing if they had any buyers in the area. Some real estate agents, they don't even answer their phone. They don't recall. They don't have any buyers, but a lot of them just didn't answer the phone. So I went back to the same lady, the same agent that took the photos for me. I asked her, did she have any investor buyers in that area? And she said, no, I don't have any investor buyers in the area, but I know someone that may. So she connected me to another agent that worked for a brokerage, right? And this agent, I reached out to him and I said, yeah, man, I got this deal right here, this property. I'm trying to sell it. You know, I don't have any buyers. I was wondering if you had a buyer. This woman, she connected me to you, said that you may have some buyers. He said, yeah, I got somebody that's interested. Let me go out there and let me go check it out, right? Let me go send it over to him. So they went, looked at it. And the agreement that I had with him, I said, I will pay you $1,000 or 10% of the net profits, right? $1,000 flat fee or 10% of the net profits after we find that buyer. That was the arrangement. And he was like, cool. So he found a buyer. His buyer offered $39,000 for the deal. But mind you, I got it under contract for $35,000 with the seller. So right there, that's a $4,000 spread, right? And with our agreement, it was either $1,000 or 10% of the profit. Obviously, 10% of the profit wasn't greater than $1,000, right? It was $1,000 or 10% of the profit, whichever is greater. So obviously, $1,000 was what the real estate agent got for bringing that buyer. So he brought the buyer to the table. We drew up the paperwork. We went with his attorney, and we closed that deal like it was nothing. So he ended up walking away with $1,000 for finding the buyer. I ended up walking away with $3,000 for connecting the two. And that's how I got my first deal done. So this deal gave me proof of concept. It let me know that wholesaling real estate in this business is legit. I can close a deal without a license. I can close a deal without using my credit. I can close a deal without using a ton of money, right? It was all about effort. So this deal took me about 6 months to close it, right? From start to finish, from when I got first started to the actual closing, it took about 6 months. And I had to humble myself because my expectations based off of what I was seeing on social media was I can close the deal in 30 days, but that's not the case. I had to put in the grunt work. I had to humble myself. I had to learn. I had to fail forward. I had to fix my processes. I had to create a process that worked for me. And that's when I found my process that works. And from there, I took that $3,000 and I invested it into the company. I got a website, got my LLC. I got merchandise. I hired a virtual assistant. I purchased more property addresses, more skip tracing, got more data so I can call more people, so I can do it over and over and over and over again. And that's what got me to where I am today. Some of the lessons that I learned in this deal was, don't waste time, trying to find a buyer. Try to get your buyers as quickly as possible. Put a lot of energy into finding that buyer. When I was looking for buyers, I wasn't really as aggressive trying to find the buyers I should have been. I just posted it up on Facebook groups and things like that and expected people to reach back out to me. No. Go find your buyers. Make the phone calls. Try to call people. Call real estate agents. Be creative. You know what I'm saying? And by being creative, I was able to get that deal. And that's what taught me that this real estate space is about relationships, right? I had to build a relationship with a numerous amount of people. I had to build a relationship with the seller. I had to build a relationship with the real estate agent that took photos for me. I had to build a relationship with the other agent that brought the cash buyer. So it's all about building relationships. And that's how I closed my first deal, right? And based off of my first deal, it showed me a lot of different things, right? It showed me you have to be persistent. You have to be consistent, right? You have to take action, right? You have to continuously take action over and over and over again, right? Because there's going to be situations in which you hit a wall, but you have to be able to figure out how to get through that wall and push through and get to the other side and make things happen. So, and that's with not just with one deal, that's with every deal. Every deal is going to have its own story and it's going to have its own hurdles and situations that you can learn from that you're going to have to maneuver through to get it to the finish line. So with that being said, man, we're going to go ahead and wrap this podcast up. If you got any value, any gems, anything that can help you close your next deal, I hope I was able to provide that for you. Comment below. I'd love to hear your feedback. If you're interested on being a guest on the Deal Divers podcast, make sure you shoot me a DM so we can get you on the show. But until next time, keep closing those deals, and we'll see you on the next one. We out.